My name is Ava. By the time the dock lights blinked out, I'd already done the one thing I swore I wasn't capable of. The lake kept its mouth shut, flat and dark, while his phone, somewhere in our house, waited for a message I'd scheduled from a number he didn't know. If this sounds messy, it is. I'm not proud. But I'm done letting quiet things eat me alive. We live in a suburb that looks like a model home catalog, hedges trimmed to the inch, driveways clean enough to eat off, neighbors who wave with elbows stiff like they're in a parade. Ethan and I were the couple people used as an example at barbecues. Look at them, steady jobs, matching bikes, even a dumb little herb garden. That's how it looked. Inside, I was keeping track of tiny shifts you'd miss unless you were the person feeling them. The way he started loving the gym late at night, the way his phone lived face down, the way he laughed a half second too late at my jokes, like he was trying to remember how. It didn't slam down all at once. It drifted in, like fog off the lake. One evening, he came home smelling like someone else's shampoo, expensive, floral, not mine. I told myself it could have been a coworker's hug, a spilled sample in a store, whatever. I folded the thought in half and slid it into the junk drawer with the rubber bands. Later, I found a receipt in his jeans, crumpled and damp, for a diner clear across town. 2 omelets, 1 coffee, 1 decaf with almond milk. He hates almond milk. I laughed out loud standing by the washer, because that's what I do when I'm scared. My mouth gets busy so my hands don't shake. You okay? He called from the hallway, and I said, yeah, just, I spilled the detergent. I wiped my palms on my thighs. He came in, smiled, kissed my temple, and asked if I wanted to watch something dumb before bed. My chest felt like a drawer I couldn't quite close. I said sure. He picked a show where the couples fix each other's houses and pretend that drywall can solve a marriage. He slid his arm around me. I felt his heartbeat through his shirt. It was steady, maybe too steady. Mine was doing rabbit kicks. I started noticing how he guarded his phone like a small animal. If it buzzed, he moved, quick, like he'd been trained. I told myself, you don't want to be that person. Don't snoop. Don't turn love into surveillance. And still, I was inventorying everything. His new brand of gum, a bottle of cologne I didn't recognize, the way he said, we, less and, I, more. Nothing big. Nothing enough. But if you've ever had a picture frame tilted by half a degree, you know how your eye can't stop going back to it. Our friend Maya came by with lemon bars. She leaned on the counter, chewing, watching me. You're doing that jaw thing, she said. What jaw thing? I asked, and my jaw clenched harder. The one where you pretend you're fine with your teeth. I wanted to spill, but I also wanted to hold the story in my hands until I understood its shape. I shrugged. Works a lot. She didn't believe me. She's known me since we were 19. She tapped the tin. You tell me when you're ready. That night, Ethan fell asleep on the couch with the TV still whispering. In that not-quite silence, he said a name. Just a breath of it, like it was sliding off his tongue. Mara. My spine went cold in a way that felt physical, like ice water poured down it. I turned off the TV, sat there for a long minute, palms flat on my thighs, heartbeat everywhere. He shifted, sighed. I stared at his face, so familiar it felt like mine. I wanted to shake him awake and demand a biography of Mara. I wanted to crawl into bed and pretend I hadn't heard anything. I did neither. I got up, walked to the kitchen, and drank water until my stomach hurt. After that, the house had an echo. He was kind, overly so, bringing me coffee, refilling the bird feeder I always forget, offering to take my car in. It was like he was building a case for himself as a good man while some other life tugged at his sleeve. And me? I started moving slower, like if I wasn't careful, I'd step through a soft spot in the floor and drop. On a Sunday, he asked if I wanted to drive out to the lake. It's been a minute, he said, casual. The lake is our place, or it was. Kids fish there, old men play cards under a pavilion, teenagers practice pretending they're not teenagers. We walked the path, hand in hand. He pointed at a heron, made a joke about our future retirement, soft voice, easy smile. I watched his mouth form the words and felt something weird, compassion and anger sitting side by side like strangers on a bus. At the end of the dock, he squeezed my fingers. "You know I love you," he said, not looking at me. Wind lifted a piece of my hair, it tickled my cheek. I swallowed. "Yeah," I said. My voice sounded like a borrowed coat. He nodded, like we'd settled something. We hadn't. When we got home, he took a shower. I stood in the closet, staring at our clothes, his shirts lined up like soldiers, my dresses like flags at half-mast. A shoebox on the top shelf had shifted forward, just a little. I reached up, pulled it down. Inside, old photos, ticket stubs, and an envelope from a bank I didn't recognize. Safe deposit box. I sat on the carpet, knees up, the carpet imprinting little grids into my skin, and held the envelope like it might bite. I didn't open it. Not then. I slid the box back, washed my face, and told myself I would be the kind of person who waits for proof. But that night, when he fell asleep again, breathing deep, I took my phone, downloaded an app, and bought a number that wasn't mine. I typed a message. I set it to send later. My thumb hovered, shaking. Then I pressed the button, and the future moved, quietly, like a fish under dark water, toward us. When the text went out, it was just a buzz from the other room, nothing dramatic, nothing that should have made my ribs feel too tight for my lungs. I was rinsing a mug that didn't need to be rinsed. He was toweling his hair, humming off-key. The second buzz came quicker, like a tap on the shoulder. He didn't move at first. Then he did, almost casual, like he'd remembered laundry in the washer. I listened to his walk, the way his heels touched first when he didn't want to look like he was hurrying. The phone lit his face in the hallway. His mouth flattened. I saw the little swallow he does when he's choosing a lie and making it palatable. "Spam," he called, tone bright. "Solar panels." I said, "Cool," and the word scratched my throat on the way out. He stood there, pretending to delete it, thumb hovering too long, eyes doing that tiny dart like he was scrolling the edge of a cliff. I wiped the same clean mug again. My hands smelled like lemon soap and metal. He walked past me, kissed my head, and said he'd be home late after the gym. The air moved around him like he was a weather system. I went to our bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed, hands on my knees so my thighs wouldn't shake. My body was all tells. That envelope on the top shelf pulsed in my head. I took it down, held it flat. Safe deposit box. A branch 3 towns over, not anywhere we'd ever had reason to go. I set it on my lap and tried to feel what I was supposed to feel. Anger, sure. But there was also this dumb tenderness, like wanting to shield a child from their own bad idea. That made me madder. I put the envelope back and shut the closet as quietly as you close a door on a sleeping baby. He left with his gym bag and a smile that didn't crinkle his eyes. As soon as the garage door thudded, I called Maya. She picked up on the first ring. "Hey. What's up?" I told her I needed a favor without details, the kind friends ask for when the floor is wobbling. "Say when and where," she said. I asked her to call me in an hour and pretend she needed me to come over. No drama. Just a soft exit if I needed one. She didn't ask why. She said, "Text me the safe word." I said, "Lemons," and my mouth went dry saying it. I drove his car because it felt like stealing something small. The seat still remembered his shape. The floor mats were too clean. In the cup holder, a folded napkin from that diner across town. I pressed my knuckles into it, like maybe I could leave prints that would matter later. The sun slid down and made the windshield a mirror. It could see my own face, eyes wide, jaw buzzing. I laughed once, short and wrong, just to get my mouth to remember how. He didn't go to the gym. I followed him at a distance that felt both ridiculous and not enough. My heart pounded so hard my vision shimmered. He turned into the diner lot like it was muscle memory. Parked. Sat for a second with his hands on the wheel, breathing. Then he went inside. My fingers tingled. I told myself to be a person, not a siren. I parked behind a delivery van and watched through the window's reflection because I was too cowardly to look directly. She was already there. Brown hair, neat blouse, a posture like someone who's been told her whole life to make herself presentable. He smiled the real smile, the one that uses his whole face. It hit me in a place lower than my stomach, like I'd swallowed a rock. My hand went to my phone without me telling it to. I held it too tight, nails biting my palm. I didn't lift it. Not yet. I needed my breath first. Maya called, right on time. "Lemons?" she asked quietly. I swallowed. "Not yet," I said. "Do you want me to come get you anyway?" she asked. I listened to the murmur of plates, the soft scrape of forks, a burst of their laughter slipping through the door like a draft. "If I tell you I'm fine, I'm lying," I said, and my voice wobbled. "So don't tell me you're fine," she said. "Tell me what you're doing." I pressed my forehead to the steering wheel, cold leather steadied me. "I'm watching him," I said. "I'm deciding who I'm going to be after this." Maya was quiet in the way people are when they're holding your hand from a distance. "Okay," she said. "Be the version of you that can live with herself tomorrow." They leaned in. He touched her wrist like it was a habit. My chest tightened until I had to open the window for air. I thought about the dock, about the heron, about the idea that you could be two people in one day and both of you could be telling the truth. My fingers finally moved. I unlocked my phone. Not to take a picture, my hands weren't steady enough yet, but to open the app I'd used before. I typed 5 words that felt like dropping a coin down a well. I didn't hit send. I stared at them, the way you stare at a road you know you're about to take. He laughed again, and this time I heard something else in it, a tightness, like he was reassuring her. She glanced toward the door, then away. Fear flickered over her face and hid behind a smile. That surprised me. It shouldn't have, but it did. I'd expected arrogance. What I saw was somebody who didn't know what kind of story she was in. My anger sharpened and, weirdly, focused. I wasn't going to blow up the diner. I was going to build something careful. I hit send. Then I stepped out of the car, palms damp, knees buzzing, and walked toward the glass, lining my breath up with my footsteps so I didn't shake. The bell over the door did that cheery jingle, the kind that makes you think of pancakes and families, and Ethan reacted like someone had cracked ice behind his neck. His phone was already in his hand. He read the message, my 5 words, and did that quick exhale he does when he wants to pretend nothing's wrong. The woman with him, brown hair, neat blouse, tilted her head. "You okay?" she asked, soft but alert. He smiled too widely. "Work," he said, throat tight. I slid onto a stool at the counter, asked for water with lemon, and tried to make my hands normal on the formica. They trembled anyway, a skip in the surface like wind. From the mirror behind the pie display, I watched them without looking. The diner's fluorescents were bright enough to make strangers look honest. He kept glancing at the door, then at his screen, then at her. She touched his wrist, not romantic exactly, more like two people holding a secret between their skin. The waitress set down my water and said something kind, something about how I looked like I'd been on the road a while. I nodded, pressed the cold glass to my lip, and felt the shake settle in my teeth. His text came fast. "Who is this?" he typed, shoulders tight. My phone vibrated against my thigh. I thumbed back, someone paying attention. He flinched, eyes cutting toward the windows as if the letters had weight. The woman, Mara, I knew it now by the way my body recognized the name, leaned in. "If this is too complicated," she started. He cut her off with that gentle tone he uses when he wants to quiet a worry instead of solve it. "It's not. I've got it. After all this, it'll be fine." "After what?" I wanted to ask out loud. After me? I turned my menu into a shield and took the picture that would keep me from gaslighting myself later. Emotional proof, that's what my therapist once called it when your brain tries to clean the blood off the floor because love asked nicely. The photo, his fingers resting on her wrist, a sugar packet half torn, her straw wrapper coiled like a tiny white snake, the diner's neon making a soft halo on their hair. My reflection is faint in the glass case, eyes too bright, mouth flat. I saved it and felt the click in my chest, like a seatbelt latching. He typed again. Please stop. 2 words that told me more than any apology he could have crafted at home. I opened the thread and took a screenshot, the kind where your own breath gets trapped behind the glass. Second proof. He put his phone face down and tried to laugh, but the sound was made of splinters. Mara swallowed and glanced at the door. I can't keep doing this, she whispered. It's not just me anymore. The sentence landed crooked, like it had 2 meanings stacked. He said, just until the gala. After that, we're clear. Gala? The word felt rich and wrong in a place that smelled like coffee and grease. I texted Maya under the counter. Lemons soon, I wrote. She replied with a single heart that wasn't cheerful. It was like a palm on my back, steadying. The waitress asked if I wanted pie. My mouth said yes before my stomach voted. I forked at the crust, tasted nothing, watched everything. Ethan reached for the check. Mara stopped him. No, I've got cash. She slid a folded envelope onto the table edge, then pulled it back like the sight of it could hurt someone. He murmured, you shouldn't, and the softness turned my throat raw. A family came in, loud with weekend energy, and the noise gave me cover. I stood, took my glass, and walked past their booth like I was headed to the bathroom. Up close, I could smell Ethan's cologne, the new one, colder, like metal and rain. He saw me. A full heartbeat passed where nobody breathed. His pupils blew wide, the way they do when fear rushes the body. Ava, he said, barely sound. Mara looked at me, then at him, and in that flicker I saw something I wasn't ready for, not triumph, not guilt exactly, fear that included me. Do you know her? She asked, voice small. He answered too quickly. She's from work. I set my water down on the edge of their table like I belonged there and nodded to Mara. I like your blouse, I said, because my mouth needed a normal sentence to sit on. It suits you. Her hand twitched. Thanks, she said, confused politeness trying to stand upright on a shaking floor. Ethan's knee bounced so hard the salt shaker rattled. I met his eyes, not black hole cold, not screaming. Just steady. He looked away first. I didn't make a scene. I didn't throw the water or demand history with timestamps. I slid a napkin from the dispenser and, with a dull golf pencil, wrote one clear line. Ask him about the doc. I folded it in half and tucked it under the lip of her plate, a corner peeking like a tongue. Then I walked on, not to the bathroom but to the register, dropped cash beside the pie I couldn't taste, and stepped back into the bright, ordinary afternoon. Outside, the heat hit my face and the world kept doing what it always does. A dog barked, a truck downshifted, a kid whined for a milkshake. My phone buzzed. Ethan again. We need to talk, he wrote on the anonymous thread. I stood on the sidewalk and felt my pulse in my palms. I typed from my real number this time, at home. Then, from the other number, I added, start by telling the truth. I slid the proofs into a folder on my phone, photo, screenshot, and started toward the car, the napkin I'd left working like a match I hadn't struck yet. I got home first and the house felt wrong, like a stage before actors come out, everything in place, no air in it. I opened a window for sound that wasn't my blood. The neighbor's sprinkler ticked, a metronome for nerves. I set 2 glasses on the table and couldn't stop aligning them, rim to rim. My hands were damp. I wiped them on my jeans and they stuck for a second, like the fabric didn't want me either. I texted Maya one word, ready, and put my phone face down so I wouldn't beg it to save me. The garage door groaned. His footsteps came in polite, like he was greeting a client. He saw the glasses, the tidy living room, my flat face, and he understood that every easy runway had been ripped up. He started anyway. Ava, it's not, his voice skidded. He swallowed. It's complicated. I followed you, I said. The words left a taste like pennies. He nodded, lips pressed thin. Okay. He didn't ask how much I'd seen. Shame knows the shape of a story without the details. He reached for me and I stepped back. My calf hit the couch, my body remembered furniture before my brain did. He dropped his hand, flexed it, like he was testing if it still worked. Who is she? I asked, and my throat tightened on the last word. He breathed out through his nose, a slow leak. Mara. She needed help. He looked at the bookshelf instead of at me, like the spines would offer him better lines. I'm helping. That's all. You help people at diners and whisper their names in your sleep? I said, soft, because yelling would have been easier. His eyes flicked to mine, then away, then back, like I'd turned a light on too fast. I didn't mean for it to be this, he said, and his shoulders rounded, a posture I'd only ever seen on him at funerals. She's in a situation. It's temporary. Temporary until the gala? I asked. The word landed heavy between us. He froze. There it was, a flinch so quick anyone else would have missed it. You were there, he said, not a question. I saw enough, I said. He rubbed his jaw, that nervous scrub he does when he's smoothing a lie. The gala is for work, he said carefully, like the sentence had sharp corners. There's sponsorship money waiting to clear. After that, I can handle it. Handle what? Her rent? Your guilt? The envelope she tried to pay with? My voice was steady, my knees weren't. He winced. You don't know what you're talking about, he said, and the gentle condescension made heat crawl up my neck. Then help me know, I said. Start with the bank envelope in the closet. It was like I'd tapped a spot on a wall and found the hollow. His face changed, micro-expressions running across it like weather over water. You opened it? He asked. No, I said, and for a half second he looked relieved, like a reprieve he didn't deserve. But I saw it. Safe deposit box. 3 towns over. Why? He sat down because his legs didn't want him anymore. He leaned forward, elbows on knees, hands clasped so tight the knuckles went white. I watched the small tremor in his thumb. I pressed mine into my palm to stop its echo. I made a promise, he said finally. I'm keeping it until I can make it right. That's what the gala is. It aligns. Aligns, I repeated, because the word was absurd in a room that smelled like our laundry. He nodded, eager for the thin bridge. Yes. If I get the bonus, the sponsorship hits, if a couple things fall into place. You're paying someone, I said. Or hiding something. Which is it? He stared at the carpet, the little loops, like there were answers in the pattern. It's not what you think, he said softly. It never is, I said. Why the doc? His head jerked up so fast I heard the pop in his neck. What? He asked, too quickly. I let the quiet expand, a slow balloon. The doc, I said. Why is that where you go when you're promising people things you can't keep? He shut his eyes. When he opened them, they were wet, and I hated that part of me that wanted to wipe his face. Ava, please, he said. Don't drag that into this. You dragged it, I said. My jaw ached, I shifted it and it clicked. He looked at the window like he could climb out of it. If you love me, he said, and the phrase scratched at my ribs, give me time. After the gala, after I fix what I broke, then I'll tell you everything. You already broke it, I said. You just haven't heard the sound yet. We sat in the kind of silence that isn't peace. The clock pretended not to exist. The refrigerator hummed like a distant highway. My fingers went numb and then burned as the blood came back. He tried again. I didn't touch her, he said quickly, needy. Not like that. I thought of the photo, his fingers on her wrist, the almost tenderness, and felt my stomach fold. You touched a lot, I said. He wiped his face with both hands, like he could scrub his panic off. If you blow this up now, he said, voice shaking, it won't just hit me. He hesitated. It'll hit people who don't deserve it. The warning sat there, plain and heavy. Beneath it, something else, fear that wasn't only about me. Maya texted, lemons? I stared at the screen and typed back, not yet. Then I looked at him and chose the version of me I could live with tomorrow. Okay, I said. His shoulders sagged, hope rushing in too fast. Okay? I'll give you rope, I said. You show me what you do with it. His throat worked. Thank you, he whispered. I stood, walked to the closet, and took down the shoebox. But I'm keeping this where I can see it, I said, palming the envelope. Tomorrow, we go to that branch together. He opened his mouth to object and closed it. I slid the envelope into my bag, felt its weight reorganize my center, and pictured the dock, the gala, and the quiet thing I'd already buried waiting for me to dig it up. I didn't sleep. He did that shallow drift people do when they're hiding from their own head, breath floating up and collapsing, over and over. By the time I heard birds scratch at the gutter, my body felt grainy, like my bones had edges. I made coffee I didn't want and watched the mug fog my glasses. He came into the kitchen with his careful face on, the one where his eyebrows asked for mercy. We don't have to go, he said softly. I swallowed around the sand in my throat. We do. The drive was quiet in the kind that isn't peace. He kept both hands on the wheel, knuckles pale, shoulders tight like the seatbelt was too short. Every red light felt like a dare. I wanted to ask a dozen pointed questions and I wanted to put my head on his arm and pretend we were fine. My jaw clicked when I tried to yawn. He noticed, his hand lifted, then dropped to his thigh. He looked like a person trying not to spook a skittish animal. Inside, the fluorescent calm made everything flatter. We didn't speak names. We sat in a small room that smelled like paper and old carpet. When they set the box on the table and left us alone with it, my palms went slick. He stared at it the way some people stare at water when they can't swim. Open it, I said. The words were steady, my legs hummed like wires. He did. No jewelry. No stacks of money. A slim folder, an old key on a shoelace, a thumb drive with a cracked cap, a worn photo face down. He exhaled in a way that told me the photo had teeth. He didn't touch it. I did. It was of us, before the house, back when the couch was a futon and our coffee table was a crate. Behind us, on that dock, stood a man in a windbreaker, out of focus, pointing at something in the water. On the margin, in Ethan's handwriting, was one word, promise. My stomach went cold. Who is he? I asked. Ethan rubbed his temple. A mistake, he said, voice sanded down. Don't do that, I said. Give me a person, not a fortune cookie. He swallowed. He's someone who helped me help someone else, he said carefully, and that sentence felt like a hallway full of locked doors. I opened the folder. Receipts, mostly, cash deposits in small sums, scribbled notes in Ethan's fast, upright hand. Bridge until gala, one said. Another, she won't take charity. Stop calling it that. There was a torn flyer for the gala, circled sponsor names, a business card with a cell number blocked out in pen. Behind the papers, folded thin, a child's drawing, 3 stick figures under a lopsided sun, the middle one with a tall triangle dress. I touched the crayon bumps and felt my throat burn. On the back, in a different handwriting, was a single line, thank you for the doc. Lowercase, pressed hard. I slid the drawing to him. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Is it hers? I asked. He nodded once. It's complicated, he said, then winced because he heard himself. My skin prickled. Complicated is a way to skip over what hurts, I said. Try again. He looked at the key. He looped the shoelace around his finger until the tip went white. I promised I'd keep 2 people safe, he said, barely sound. I thought I could do it without breaking everything else. I was wrong. I leaned back, cold chair through my shirt. Safe from who? I asked. The silence pulsed. He glanced at the door, then at the thumb drive. Not the police, he said quickly, like he wanted me to stop thinking that direction. From attention. From someone with more reach than sense. The phrasing was too neat. I thought of the envelope Mara had pulled back like it could cut. I thought of him saying, after the gala. I thought of the man in the windbreaker, out of focus behind us, pointing. You used our dock like a chapel, I said, heat creeping up my neck. You made vows there that didn't include me. His eyes shone. I was trying to fix a piece of myself, he murmured. That isn't the same as cheating. I laughed once, sharp, it hurt my throat. You don't get to define the wound after you make it. We split the contents without saying we were doing it. He took the thumb drive and the key. I took the folder and the photo and slid the drawing back into the box because my hands shook when I held it. When I stood, my knees wobbled. I kept my palm on the table until it passed. He said my name like a wince. Ava. I paused at the door. If the gala is the hinge, I said, then I'm the door you forgot swings both ways. On the drive back, I texted Maya with my free hand, rope is real. She replied, not it your way. I stared out the window at nothing and started tying. I knew where he'd be on gala night. I knew who he needed. I knew how the sponsors loved a story. I knew the dock would keep being the place where things turned, whether he wanted that or not. So I made a plan without labels, a small pressure here, a quiet leak there, a mirror held up in a room full of lights. At home, he tried to touch my shoulder. My body flinched before my brain could stop it. I watched his hand hover in the air, empty. After this, he whispered, voice thin, you'll understand. I nodded because nodding costs less than arguing. Then I opened a drawer, pulled out a notepad, and wrote 3 names I'd need to speak to, starting with a sponsor who'd once told me he liked a redemption arc. My jaw ticked. My mouth was dry. My hands, though, my hands were steady. I spent the rest of the day moving like the floor might tilt. I called Maya because my hands needed a voice to hold. We don't blow it up, she said. We stage it. I told her about the sponsor who loves a redemption arc and how the gala eats pretty stories. Then feed it one that sticks in the throat, she said, calm like a surgeon. I pitched the sponsor from a parking lot, walking a strip of shade. His assistant remembered me, or acted like she did. I said I had a small program idea, a quiet thank you for a local good deed at a lake, no names and less comfortable. Local color, I added, hating the polish in my mouth. He jumped on it. A surprise gratitude moment, perfect. We'll leave time on stage. When I hung up, my palms were cold and bright. Maya squeezed my shoulder. Good. Now trap the truth where everyone can see it. We drove to the venue and circled it like nervous cats. Banners still rolled, lights sleeping in the ceiling. I signed up to help with check-in, which is a polite way of standing at the throat of a room. They gave me a lanyard, wristbands, a stack of blank name cards with that heavy, expensive grit. The volunteer lead explained the flow, greet, band, bar, and I nodded while, in my head, I closed doors behind Ethan one by one. On the way home I swung past the diner and found the windows dark. Across the street, a laundromat glowed blue. A little girl pressed her hands to the glass and laughed each time a sock stuck to the drum like it was waving. A woman in the same neat blouse stood nearby, phone held in a death grip. When the child spotted me, she matched her palm to mine through the glass. Warmth bled from my skin into that pain and vanished. I lifted 2 fingers in a tiny hello and kept walking. Whatever this is, she shouldn't have to carry it. I went to the dock because I wanted the place that started the lie to hold part of the truth. The planks complained, the water lay dark as a closed eye. I sat with my feet over the lip and forced myself to catalog what had been good: his laugh on a stairwell, the stupid books and regrets box, a heron-slicing morning air. Then I let the other things line up: the whisper of Mara, the bank envelope, the man pointing in the photo, the drawing with its small, fierce, thank you. I wrote a 3-line note a donor could read on stage, thanking a neighbor whose promise kept a stranger afloat. I spoke it to the water until my breath didn't stutter. The wind carried the last word away like it wanted it more than I did. At home, I laid a dress across the bed like a flag I never swore to. Ethan hovered in the doorway, hands sunk in pockets. They comped us tickets, he said, trying for normal. We should go together. My heart did a slow roll. We will. Relief softened his face in a way that made my teeth ache. He reached to hug me, my body flinched and then allowed it, rigid, like a rehearsal. Big night, I said. Rest. He nodded, grateful for any sentence that didn't cut. He slept with the phone under his pillow like a talisman. I lay awake and listened to the house tick and settle. Sometime later, headlights slid across the ceiling. Somewhere outside, a car idled and turned. A soft thud at the door snapped me upright, pulse sprinting. On the porch sat a small box wrapped in butcher paper, twine tied in a neat bow. No return address. I carried it to the table and watched my hands open it like they belonged to someone braver. The smell of the lake rose up, wet wood, cold metal. Inside lay a polished dock cleat, the exact kind our heels knock when we sit at the edge. Taped beneath it, a folded card in an unfamiliar hand, for the moment when you finally let go. My fingers went numb and then prickled. I looked down the dark hallway toward our bedroom and felt the stretch between the life I had and the one I was about to cut loose. I turned the card over. A phone number. No name. Just one word pressed so hard the ink bruised the paper: soon. I set the cleat back in its nest, slid the card into my bag beside the bank envelope, and pressed my palm flat on the table until the tremor calmed. Okay. If someone wanted to talk, they could do it under lights. Morning made the cleat look harmless, like a paperweight with a story. I wrapped it in a scarf and slid it into my bag, the card tucked beside the bank envelope. I picked a dress that felt like armor and heels that clicked like a metronome. Ethan hovered in the doorway, tie loose. You look great, he said, throat dry. I nodded. I have an early volunteer shift, I added. I'll meet you there. He hesitated, then kissed the air near my cheek. My skin prickled where he didn't land. The venue was all velvet ropes and borrowed glamour. My lanyard got me through the side door. I checked in with the lead and secured the small piece I needed, a heads up before the surprise gratitude moment. The sponsor's assistant squeezed my arm and said, "You'll cue us?" I said yes, and felt the word sit heavy in my chest. Maya arrived with a box of programs and a face that meant business. We're building a stage for the truth, she murmured, sliding me a pair of discreet earplugs. In case the room gets loud. I worked the entrance with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. I wrote names with careful loops, placed wristbands, directed people toward a bar that glittered like a trap. Ethan texted, "Are you inside?" I typed back, "At the desk." I put my phone face down and kept writing. He arrived with that walk people practice when they want to be seen as competent. The suit fit. The eyes didn't. He reached for my hand across the desk. I kept both on the clipboard and asked for his last name like we'd never met. Something in his face folded and then smoothed. "See you in there," he said, voice steady enough that only I could hear the wobble underneath. He disappeared into the room's warm noise. A little later, a blur of brown hair and a blouse that had been pressed too carefully slipped through a side entrance. Mara. She hugged the walls the way people do when they don't know if they're allowed to be somewhere. She wasn't on any list I had, which meant Ethan had found another door. She caught my eye without meaning to. We both froze for a breath. Then she looked down, clutched her small purse, and kept moving toward the back. My jaw clicked. I swallowed metal. From across the room, a man leaned against a column like he was trying not to be a landmark. Not the windbreaker, not the dock, but the same posture. He watched the crowd instead of the stage. When his gaze drifted to Ethan, it sharpened. When it slid to Mara, it tightened. He took out his phone, then put it away without using it, like the habit itself was the point. The fine hairs on my arms lifted. The card's number buzzed in my bag, one short vibration, like a knuckle on wood. I let it pass. A minute later, again. Maya noticed my fingers curl. "You okay?" she asked. "Fine," I lied. My mouth just forgot how to make spit. She handed me a mint and bumped her shoulder against mine, small, steadying. Lights dimmed for dinner, then warmed back up for speeches. The sponsor's assistant found me at the edge of the room. 2 minutes, she whispered. My pulse moved into my throat. I pulled the scarf back just enough to see the edge of the cleat, dull silver like a quiet threat, then covered it again and slid the bag over my shoulder. Ethan laughed at something a tablemate said, the sound brittle as spun sugar. Mara sat at a standing table near the exit, hands wrapped around a glass she wasn't drinking. The MC did the usual dance, gratitude, future, community, all those words that get polished until they don't snag on anything. Then she smiled and said, "We have something special, a small acknowledgement for a neighbor whose promise kept a stranger afloat." The room made that collective "oh" people make when they sense a safe kind of feeling coming. My palms went cold. I stepped to the aisle where Ethan could see me and where the man by the column couldn't miss me either. "Would our quiet neighbor stand?" the MC asked, eyes sweeping the room. I turned my head toward Ethan, just slightly, just enough. His breath snagged. Mara's fingers tightened on her glass until the condensation squeaked. The phone in my bag buzzed again. I kept my feet where they were, heels planted, heart loud enough I felt it in my gums. For a second, nobody moved. Then Ethan pushed his chair back, slow, like the floor might give, and rose into the light. Applause started like static, polite and clueless, and Ethan stood there in that warm cone of light with his hands not knowing where to be. The MC smiled the way MCs do. "Would you share a few words?" she asked, already turning it into a tidy circle. My mouth went dry. I lifted my bag onto my shoulder, felt the weight of the wrapped cleat thud against my hip, and stepped into the aisle so he could see me. His eyes found mine, flinched, then tried to obey the room. He cleared his throat. This is unexpected," he said, chuckle thin as sugar glass. The microphone made his voice too big. I raised a hand a little, like I was just another volunteer doing a job. "1 second, I called, and the sponsor's assistant beamed like I'd rehearsed it with her. I walked up the side stairs, knees buzzing, and offered the MC the scarf bundle. "A small token," I said, steady. "From the lake." She unwrapped the cleat, silver dull as a scar, and the room sighed at the symbolism it thought it understood. She extended it to Ethan. He took it with both hands because one wasn't enough. His palms left damp moons on the metal. I watched his jaw work like he was chewing a word that wouldn't go down. "Promises," the MC said brightly, "are what anchor a community." The crowd made that soft mmm sound. My teeth pressed into my tongue so I wouldn't say something mean. "Tell them who," I said from 3 steps down, not loud, not cruel. "Tell them where you stood when you made it." His eyes shot to me and back to the mic. He nodded like a man negotiating with a storm. "By the water," he said. I made a commitment to help a neighbor who didn't want attention. His voice steadied around the phrase he'd practiced in his head. Near the exit, Mara's glass tapped the table once, sharp, her fingers were shaking. She half rose and sat again, the kind of movement that makes a heart misfire. By the column, the man with the watchful posture angled his body like someone about to step into a street. The number in my bag buzzed, one short pulse, then silence. I ignored it. It buzzed again, like a breath on my neck. I took out my phone without giving myself time to think and tapped the number. The ring cut through the hush between applause and speech, clean, ordinary, impossible to ignore. Heads turned like wheat. The man by the column didn't move until the second ring, then he slid his hand inside his jacket and killed it without looking. His eyes found mine. No menace, just a flat calculation, like he was doing math. My stomach tightened. Okay. So the line between my house and this room wasn't in my head. Ethan saw the turn of faces, saw the man, saw me. His grip tightened on the cleat until his knuckles blanched. "Look," he said into the mic, breath snagging, "there are people, good people, who get caught between a bad hand and a worse one. I had resources. I filled a gap. Until after, this." He gestured at the banners, the glitter. "That's all." His voice softened on the last two words and I hated that it still reached me. "Why secret?" I asked, and the MC shot me a look that said, "You're not on the program." I kept my eyes on Ethan. He swallowed. "Because it isn't my secret," he said, and honest heat edged the sentence. Something in the room shifted at that, attention sharpening, care tilting. The sponsor smiled like a cat that just saw the commercial write itself. Mara stood. She didn't come forward, she didn't name anything. She just lifted her voice enough to travel. "When you're drowning," she said, hands white around her purse, "you don't want the whole town on the dock watching." Her mouth trembled and she steadied it. "But you remember the hand that held you." She looked at Ethan, then at me, and then down. People clapped the way they do when emotion scares them. The man by the column finally moved, 2 steps toward the aisle, then stopped when he met my stare. He gave the smallest shake of his head, like not here. My skin prickled. I didn't look away. My body felt like a lit match, tiny, hot, committed. The MC tried to land the moment. "Beautiful," she chirped. "Community is messy," I said, and it came out gentler than I expected. And sometimes the dock holds more than one story. I saw Mara's fingers twitch. She was holding the napkin I'd left at the diner, the corner darkened with sweat where her thumb pressed the word dock. The sight made my throat burn. Ethan took a breath that lifted his shoulders high and dropped them. "I kept a promise," he said into the mic, voice low. "I'm still keeping it." The truth inside that was small and hard, and I felt it anyway. He looked at me like, "Please," and I felt my mouth move before my mind decided. "Then say it clean," I said. "No choreography." He nodded once, like a man choosing a cliff that's at least his. He put the mic on the stand so his hands were free and lifted the cleat to chest height, fingers shaking. The room leaned in. The man by the column took another step. Mara whispered something I couldn't hear. My heart knocked so hard I could feel each hit in my gums. "Okay," Ethan said, more to me than to the room. "Okay." He turned, eyes finding the bright edge of stage where the stairs began, where I stood waiting without moving. "It started at the dock," he said, and my breath caught, because I knew whatever came next would tear something, one way or another. I lifted my chin the tiniest bit and gave him the only word I could manage. "Go." Ethan swallowed hard and let the room hear the smallest piece he could stand to give. "It started at the dock," he said, "when someone asked me to keep a promise I had no business making alone." The mic caught the tremor. My fingers pressed half moons into my bag strap. The cleat looked heavier in his hands than it had under our feet. He glanced toward the back where Mara held a glass like a shield, then to the column where the watcher stood pretending to be a feature of the building. "A neighbor needed time," Ethan said. I had access. I bought time. He didn't look at me when he added, "I should have told the person I love what I was doing." The MC beamed at the word neighbor. I stayed at the foot of the stairs and asked, easy as tying a shoe, "Why the secrecy?" Ethan's mouth tightened. "Because some promises attract the wrong kind of attention." His eyes flicked to the column. The watcher's stillness hardened, the kind that makes security glance and pretend they didn't. Mara's breath snagged on the rim of her glass. I didn't ask him to hide, she said into the hush between clinks. I asked him to stop someone from taking what wasn't theirs. The way she didn't say a name made the room lean. Couples in rented clothes turned their faces from her to Ethan to me, hungry to sort heroes from villains like place cards. I climbed one step so we were nearly level. You used our dock like a confessional, I said. The word "our" went through him. He nodded once, eyes too bright. I thought if I kept the water quiet, he said, the rest would calm down. He tightened his grip until the cleat kissed his skin. I was wrong. The MC started to steer us back to the program. The sponsor touched her elbow and murmured, "Let it breathe." The number in my bag buzzed, one short tremor that raced up my spine. I turned my head just enough for the watcher to read my mouth, "Later." He understood and didn't like it. Ethan lowered the cleat. "This," he gestured at lights and linen, "is a room I know how to walk. The doc taught me I don't get to decide what safety looks like for other people." True words, sharp gaps. He looked straight at me. "I should have asked you to stand there with me." My throat burned. My body wanted to forgive, my jaw refused. "You should have," I said. "You didn't." The room got quiet enough to hear fabric shift under forks. Mara left the shadow of her table and planted herself in the aisle like a tent stake. "I don't need him to be a hero," she said, voice steady because it had to be. I needed him to stall a man who thinks rent buys a say over a body. The sentence hit like a chair scraping tile. Head snapped. The watcher finally blinked. Ethan shut his eyes, opened them older. "I stalled him," he said, the pronoun carrying more than he wanted. "I'm still stalling." He glanced at me, something like apology cracking through. "Until I can pay him to go away." There it was, shape without name. Murmurs rose, confusion, sympathy, calculation. I lifted a hand and the sponsor, curious, let me have the air. "If this is gratitude," I said softly, "make it earn the word. You don't need names to know the difference between help and hush money." The watcher's phone buzzed in his pocket. He silenced it without looking, eyes on our hands like he was measuring drop distance. Maya slid 2 steps closer to the aisle, not guarding me, just where she could catch me if my knees quit. I felt that weight like an extra rib. Ethan raised the cleat as if it could testify. "I can't tell you everything," he said, no apology left, just a limit. "I can tell you I chose wrong when I didn't trust the person I promised my actual life to." He breathed, shook, steadied. "I'm done choosing that way." He stepped down toward me, the room holding still like a lake pretending it has no currents. Mara laced her fingers and pressed them against her chest as if holding her ribs together from the outside. Ethan offered the cleat like returning a borrowed tool. The metal was warm from his palms. My hands didn't want to move, my body made me anyway. I took it, felt its weight tug my shoulder, and kept my eyes level. "Good," I said, "just for him and the front tables. After this we go back to where it started." I let it hang. All of us. The room braced, I moved. We spilled out of the ballroom in a current of polite chatter, but our little cluster moved against it, like we were slipping down a side channel nobody else could see. I kept the cleat in my bag, the weight kissing my hip each step. Ethan walked a half pace behind me, hands open like he was approaching a skittish horse. Mara hugged her purse to her stomach, chin tucked. The watcher, same slack pose, same alert eyes, peeled off a column and followed at a polite distance that wasn't polite at all. Maya ghosted our flank, quiet, eyes on me, ready to be gravity if I started to float. The night air hit my face cold and clean. I didn't look back, I could feel them stretching behind me like kites on a line. "We're not doing this in a parking lot," I said, voice steady because I made it be. "We're going to the dock." Ethan made a small sound in his throat, like a yes that didn't know how to live yet. Mara nodded once, grateful and panicked at the same time. The watcher's shoes clicked once on concrete, then softened on grass. The lake waited like it always does, dark and bare of commentary. The boards flexed under us, a familiar complaint. I stopped at the midpoint and put my bag down, palms on the rough wood to steady the tremor running up my arms. "This is where you started it," I said to Ethan. "So this is where you say it clean." He swallowed hard, eyes on the water, like it might throw him a script. "I kept someone from drowning," he said, voice thin. I told myself secrecy was protection. It was cowardice. Mara let out a breath that sounded like a sob pressed flat. "He bought days," she said. "He bought quiet." Her fingers worked at the seam of her purse until the stitches squeaked. I thought I could climb out before the bill came due. The watcher stayed a step back on the path, like he didn't want to get Lake on his shoes. "You've had your moment," he said, mild, as if we were arguing over a reservation. "Let it end there." His tone was exactly the kind people use when they believe they own the period at the end of your sentence. I crouched and unwrapped the cleat. The metal was cool, even through the scarf. I set it between us like a small altar. "Promises anchor people until they become chains," I said, more to myself than to him. "We're deciding which one this is." Ethan knelt beside me, knees popping loud in the quiet. "I should have told you," he said, eyes on my hands. "From the first text. From the first receipt. From the first time I said her name in my sleep." The honesty knocked something loose in my chest. I gripped the board edge until my fingers hurt. "You didn't," I said. "So now we build something else." Mara edged forward, as if a spotlight might suddenly find her. "He took pictures of my door," she said, barely sound. "Sent them when I didn't answer. Left notes under the mat." She glanced back toward the path, toward the watcher, and flinched when our eyes followed. I kept telling myself he just wanted the money. I kept being wrong. The watcher sighed like we were inconveniencing him. "You're dressing simple transactions in melodrama," he said. "If you can't afford a thing, you don't keep the thing. That's not menace. That's arithmetic." His smile didn't reach his eyes. Something about it felt practiced, the kind of expression a person uses to pass for human in a room. I stood. My knees wobbled and then remembered how. "You sent a cleat to my house," I said. "With a card that said, soon." If that was arithmetic, it was written in blood. He tilted his head. "Poetry," he said lightly. "Must have been someone else." He lied without blinking. My skin went cold and tight. Maya stepped onto the first board, shoes whispering. "We're done bargaining in shadows," she said, calm as a nurse. "If you have a message, say it where ears can hold it." The watcher's gaze flicked to her, then back to me, recalculating. I looped a length of rope through the cleat because my hands needed something to do besides shake. The motion steadied me, muscle memory from summers spent tying boats that weren't ours. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, and my voice stopped pretending to be small. I nodded at Ethan, "is going to call off whatever arrangement he made that kept you at our edges." Ethan inhaled, nodded, throat working. I nodded at Mara, "is going to sleep without listening for footsteps." Mara covered her mouth and nodded so hard her hair jumped. "And you," I met the watcher's eyes, "are going to leave this lake out of your business." He smiled a different smile, thinner. "Or?" he asked softly. My heart kicked. "Or I tell the story in every room you eat from," I said. "Not with names. With a shape that looks a lot like you. And I don't stop until people can't hear your voice without tasting metal." Silence pulled tight between us. The watcher's jaw flexed once. He slid his hands into his pockets so I wouldn't see them curl. "You're very sure of your stage," he said. "Be careful you don't fall through it." "I built it," I said. "I know where the soft boards are." My palms were damp. My mouth was dry. My spine felt like a steel rod someone had heated and bent straight. Ethan reached for my wrist, stopped, and let his hand hover open, learning new muscle. Mara spoke to the water. "I kept a key I didn't know I'd taken," she said, voice shaking. "I kept a photo. If I have to, I'll hand them to anyone who asks. She didn't say what the photo showed. She didn't need to. The watcher understood anyway. I saw it in the way his eyes thinned, the way he recalculated consequences and didn't like the total. He took one slow step back, as if the doc had edged forward while he wasn't looking. Soon, he said, almost kind. You'll decide you want quiet again. He turned, shoes soft on the path, and melted back into the ordinary dark, like a trick the lake does when it wants to seem empty. We stood there with the cleat between us, the rope making a neat figure eight under my hands. My body shook like it had only just realized what we'd done. Ethan leaned into the night and spoke to the part of me that still remembered us before the lies. Tell me where to stand, he said. Here, I answered, and moved his hand to the rope. Hold this. Don't let go. The rope warmed under our hands until it felt like a pulse we were sharing. The watcher was gone, but his absence sat beside us like a jacket someone forgot on a chair. Maya tucked her chin into her scarf and scanned the path one more time. Mara swiped at her cheeks with the heel of her hand, tiny, determined movements, like she refused to let tears have the last word. Ethan's grip tightened, then eased, then tightened again. I could feel the apology in it, raw and clumsy, and I let it be what it was. We're not safe because he walked away, I said. We're safe when he stops thinking we're easy. My mouth felt dry enough to crack. Ethan nodded hard, like he could turn agreement into structure. Thumb drive, he said, almost to himself. It has context. I looked at Mara. She lifted her shoulder. Use whatever helps, she whispered. Just, please don't put my kid on a stage. My stomach pulled tight. We won't. We split duties because movement keeps panic from congealing. Maya took Mara to her place, for one night, maybe two, the way good friends say it so it sounds ordinary. Ethan and I drove home with the lake smell on our clothes. He gripped the wheel at 10 and 2 like a beginner because he was. Every block felt borrowed. Inside, the house had that thin quiet of a hotel room after the suitcase closes. He set the small box on the table like it might meow. We opened the thumb drive without ceremony. No hacking, no spy movie. Folders, scans, voice memos with dates stripped. Receipts for cash orders to a property company that uses a different name when it wants to sound friendly. A list of initials with amounts scribbled beside them, none big enough to matter to a corporation, all big enough to break a person. An audio clip, short, a man's voice softened through a sleeve, soon. The same almost kindness as the card. I felt my skin try to leave my body. Ethan rubbed his eyes the way he does when he's trying to rearrange facts into a less painful shape. I wanted to float her, he said, meaning Mara. Just long enough to catch breath. He showed up at the dock and turned it into a calendar with teeth. He shook his head, jaw ticking. I thought I could out-organize him. His mouth twisted. I outlied you instead. I leaned on the counter until the edge imprinted my palms. We're past speeches, I said quietly. We build pressure. Clean. Visible. No names that will get small people crushed. My phone lit with a text from the sponsor's assistant. Loved that moment. Let's deepen the lake story for next quarter. My throat made a low sound I didn't recognize. Great, I typed, fingers steady. Pitching a community relief fund. Anonymous, doc-themed. I'll draft. Maya would call it weaponizing sincerity. She wouldn't be wrong. Ethan paced a small loop between the fridge and the table, like his body needed a perimeter. He'll test us, he said. He always tests. Good, I said. Then we teach. I forwarded the soon audio to Maya with a single note, tone match. She sent back a thumbs up and a sentence that steadied me. He's not magic, just practiced. We packed a bag for Mara with the kind of practical mercy you can do at midnight without any ceremony. Toothbrush, sweatshirt, a photo frame face down so the glass wouldn't break. Ethan stood in the doorway like a student waiting for a grade. I can sleep on the couch, he said, voice thin. You can sleep, I said. I'm working. It wasn't cruelty, it was the only sentence I trusted. I drafted the bones of the fund pitch in plain words: no glitter, small grants to stop evictions before they start, managed by a third party the sponsor already loved, donations matched by the gala board. A redemption arc for people who actually need one. I let the cleat sit beside my laptop, weighty and honest, and every time I hesitated, I ran my fingers over the cool metal and felt my jaw unlock. Near the bottom of the box sat the key on its shoelace. I threaded it through my fingers until pulse slowed. Storage unit? I asked. Ethan winced. Different lockup. The man in the windbreaker keeps one by the bait shop. He calls it insurance. My stomach dropped. And you've been paying the premium. He nodded, shame bright as heat. I picked up the cleat, then the card, and dialed. It rang once. Soon, the softened voice asked. No, I said. Now. Doc. Bring whatever story makes you feel tall. A pause, the laugh. I didn't wait for yes. I had it. The drive to the lake felt like holding my breath too long. I texted Maya a pin and a single word, Doc, and she sent back, seen. Ethan's knee bounced against the console until I put my hand on it. He stilled, then left his palm open between us like he wanted me to fill it and understood why I couldn't. Streetlights slid over the windshield in thin bands that made his face look older. If he brings anyone, he started. Then we're already right about what kind of man he is, I said, and my mouth went dry saying it. We parked in the gravel where kids leave gum wrappers. The boards gave under our feet, familiar as a bruise you keep touching. I set the bag down and unwrapped the cleat like a ritual. The metal gleamed dull and honest. I looped the rope through it because my hands needed a task. Ethan stood at my shoulder, close enough that I could feel the heat of him without wanting it. Tell me where to stand, he whispered. There, I said, nodding to the side where the planks didn't shift, and he obeyed like it mattered, because it did. Footsteps stitched the path, unhurried, like we were a meeting on a calendar. The watcher stepped into the pool of light from the pavilion, jacket open, posture relaxed in a way that told you it wasn't. The windbreaker man came with him, carrying a plastic tote like groceries. When our eyes hit the tote, he smiled a small, neat smile. Insurance, he said. His voice was local, soft edges, hard center. The watcher's phone chimed once, and he silenced it with a thumb. You brought props, I said, trying to keep my voice from wobbling. Cute. He tilted his head. You called, he said mildly. I came. That's service. The windbreaker man set the tote down and nudged it with his shoe. Inside, folders sealed in plastic, a spiral notebook, a cheap camera. My palms went slick. Ethan made a small sound he tried to swallow. I took out my phone, opened the clip from the thumb drive, and tapped play. Soon, the softened voice breathed into the dock air, my tiny speaker turning it thin and nasty. The watcher's mouth didn't move, but his eyelids did, once, like a flinch he couldn't file away. Poetry, he said again, but flatter this time. Bad audio. The windbreaker man glanced at him, then at me, calculation doing laps behind his eyes. You sent a cleat to my house, I said. You stood in a ballroom and breathed down our necks. You collect people like rent. Here's what changes. I pointed at the tote. That goes away. All of it. And you stop circling this lake, this woman, this number. I tapped the card in my pocket. You back up. He smiled, not unkind, and I hated how reasonable it looked. You mistake theater for leverage, he said. Rooms forget. People like stories until stories require work. He put his hands in his pockets. You're mad. You'll pick your couch over a crusade. Maybe, I said. But I don't need forever. I need now. A fund is being built with your business model as the brochure nobody prints. The minute you touch a door you shouldn't, I hand the outline to every mouth that feeds you. No names. Just shape. You can't sue a silhouette. My heart tripped, I kept my face steady. The windbreaker man crouched, popped the tote lids, let me see pages without letting me touch them. Copies, he said, bored. Boxes of them. He wanted me to see the futility, to feel small. That made something stubborn in me click into place. I looked at Ethan. He met my eyes, and for once didn't search for a softer sentence. He took the key on the shoelace from his pocket, wound it around his finger once like a goodbye, and walked to the edge. Pay attention, he told them, voice quiet. He dropped the key into the black water. We listened for the plunk and heard nothing, just the soft swallow of the lake taking it. The windbreaker man's eyebrows climbed a fraction. The watcher's jaw ticked. Symbolism, he said. Courage without math. Math, I echoed, throat tight. Okay. I lifted my phone so he could see the little gray bar on the scheduled message I'd primed for the sponsor's assistant, the one that said, urgent, predatory buyouts masquerading as aid, sample audio attached, need positioning tonight. I held my thumb over, send, felt how my hand shook, didn't move it. You walk away, I said, that bar stays gray. You test us again, it goes blue and then we don't get to choose quiet even if we want to. The watcher studied my thumb like it was a small animal he could outweight. The windbreaker man shifted his weight, impatient in a way that felt dangerous. She doesn't stop, Ethan said softly, and the way he put his body between us, half a step, nothing heroic, just present, made the back of my eyes burn. The watcher breathed in through his nose, out through his mouth, the way people do when they're reordering their day. You're building a stage, he said. I prefer rooms without one. He nudged the tote toward the path with his shoe. I keep my insurance. You keep your theater. We don't visit one another again. It was a dare dressed as compromise. Maya's text lit my lock screen, back gate. Headlights. I didn't turn. I didn't need to. Try me, I said, and hit play again on soon, let it float out over the dark water like a flare. He flinched properly this time, small and real. He picked up his phone and slid it into an inner pocket like it had teeth. Revised calendar, he said, nodding to the windbreaker man. We're done. They turned. They didn't hurry. That told me they weren't sure who had the bigger stomach. When the path swallowed them, my body remembered gravity. My knees went watery. I sat hard on the planks and pressed my palms flat to the wood until the trembling evened out. Ethan crouched, not touching, close enough that I could feel him hold back. Did we just win? He asked, voice thin with hope. I shook my head. We bought days, I said. Now we make them cost him. We didn't go home, we went to Maya's. Lemon cleaner, popcorn, a couch that swallows nerves. Mara clutched a mug. Ethan hovered by the bookshelf like paperbacks could cover him. I set the cleat on the table. Okay, I said. Days cost him. How? Maya didn't flinch. We starve his version and feed ours, she said. We sketched it on junk mail, a doc-branded bridge fund, small grants with dignity, a human hello on the other end. Not threats. Not fire. Light. Ethan listened, then started listing the shell names that property outfit uses when it wants to look charitable. If these appear on any sponsor paperwork, they bail, he said. They hate reputational mold. I called the sponsor's assistant while pacing between a plant and the window. Doc initiative, micro bridges, anonymous stories, I said. She loved it, promised to bring it, first thing. I texted the copy I'd written at 3 in the morning and felt that nervy second wind crawl back into my hands. Mara watched like a passenger watching a pilot. Do I have to speak? She asked. Only if you want to, I said. Relief and grief crossed her face like fast clouds. She nodded and tucked her purse under her chair the way people do when they're done running for a minute. We didn't sleep much. By morning the assistant had looped in the board chair, who loved the phrase, bridge fund, like it was his. He offered a match if we could activate partners. We swallowed the complication and said yes. Maya drafted posts that didn't name villains, just currents you recognize in your bones. Soft launch that evening. Pebble, ripples. The watcher tested us at lunch, a postcard of some other lake with "quiet" scrawled on the back. My stomach went cold hot. I photographed it, slid it under the cleat, and kept moving. He wanted me stuck on the word. I wanted him stuck on the money. Ethan cooked eggs he didn't eat. "If you want me gone until this is over, be useful instead," I said, and winced at the edge in it. He called 3 people I didn't know he knew, 2 landlords sick of that company, and a pastor who'd buried too many quiet panics. He listened more than he talked. It looked good on him. I hated noticing. That evening the posts went up. The fund link worked. The sponsor reshared with a caption about anchoring neighbors. 10s, 20s, one searing 75 with the note, "Lost my apartment last year, go crush them kindly." My hand steadied around purpose. Mara texted a photo of her kid asleep under a fort of books. She didn't check the door 3 times, she wrote. I put my phone face down and breathed until my throat cooled. Pushback changed shape. No windbreaker. Instead, a cheerful account with a stock photo smile posted, "Some people love to play victim at the lake, and real neighbors pay what they owe." Bots echoed it. Maya replied once, dry as chalk, "Real neighbors don't stock doors. We starved the rest." You could feel them fishing for a fight under the dock. Ethan came to me with a handwritten apology for the fund page. No names, just me. I called secrecy protection when it was fear, he said, shaking. He held it out like something sacred he might drop. Post it, I said. He did. Donations doubled within the hour. People love contrition when it bleeds a little. Near midnight, when the house finally went thin and quiet, I opened the small ledger I'd slipped from their tote. Nothing that would make a cop clap, enough to bruise a reputation if a light found it. Pressed between invoices sat a receipt curled like a dead leaf, a hospital copay with the watcher's surname bent by 1 letter. My stomach dropped, then softened in spite of itself. I put it back. Not yet. Boundaries are scaffolding, not mercy. I could hold 2 truths, harm and hurt, and still build the stage. We set the next move, a small gathering by the dock with donors, nothing flashy, Bluetooth speaker, lemonade, a table of index cards where people could write what they need and what they could give. We're not burning him, Maya said. We're making him irrelevant. I nodded, jaw sore but hands steady. When I turned off the lamp, the room felt less like a set and more like a place we might live. And the water outside, waiting, knew exactly where the next line would land. By late afternoon the lake looked still enough to lie. Maya set out lemonade and a plate of cookies. I lined up blank index cards and 2 pens that already hated the chill. People arrived in 2s and 3s, neighbors, a teacher from the elementary school, the sponsor's assistant with flats dusted from the path. Ethan hauled folding chairs with the earnestness of a man trying to lift what was heavier inside him. Mara tucked her hair behind her ears and stood near the table like she was volunteering at someone else's event. We'd asked for small things. On one card a teen wrote, "Rides to my shift when the bus is late." Another offered, "Crib mattress, gently used." An older man in a veteran's cap asked if bringing coffee was allowed. I told him yes, and my throat tightened because kindness presses on the bruise. The assistant scanned the scene like she was building a pitch. "This looks right," she murmured. "No banners. Just hands." I nodded, palms damp around the cards. "We're done with speeches," I said. "We'll take receipts." She smiled, not the glossy one, the human one. Ethan uncapped a pen and his hand shook, barely, but I felt it like a tremor under floorboards. "I can speak if you want," he offered. "Only if you can say it to me first," I answered. He swallowed, eyes unsettled. "I love you," he said, "not for show." It landed wrong and right at the same time. "Keep going," I whispered. "With actions." A car idled at the curb too long. No watcher. Instead, a courier in a buttoned coat brought a manila envelope and a polite voice. The letter inside waved words like defamation and tortious interference. I held it up for the assistant. She blew air through her teeth. "They always try that first." "We love process," she said. "We can love it louder." She photographed the logo and texted someone I didn't ask about. Maya leaned into my shoulder. "He wants fire," she whispered. I drank lemonade so my mouth had a job. "We react with paperwork," I said, and heard how far I'd come from the woman sending anonymous texts in the dark. People wrote, offered, paired. Someone brought a Bluetooth speaker and kept the music low. The wind lifted card corners. Ethan anchored them with smooth stones from the shoreline. Each time his fingers grazed mine, my body sparked, then went numb, like it couldn't pick a lane. Mara wrote on an index card, folded it, and handed it to me. I didn't open it. I slid it under the cleat like a prayer scrap and felt my hand steady. Halfway through, the man in the windbreaker appeared at the grass edge. No tote. No smile. He watched the table the way you watch a tide you misjudge. His eyes flicked over the assistant, the volunteers, the cards and cookies, the little knots of neighbors trading small salvations. Something in his posture sagged. He started to leave, stopped, then set a paper cup of coffee on the rail like he needed proof he'd been here. I couldn't tell if it was threat or concession. My ribs tightened anyway. Ethan came to me, hands open. "Tell me where to stand," he said again. "There," I pointed, between the table and the path. He took the spot like a door without hinges. The windbreaker man's face folded and smoothed, then, finally, he stepped back. One pace. Another. He left the coffee, walked to the road, got in his car, and didn't look back. The assistant exhaled. "I'll take that as a no," she said. "And to legal." She squeezed my elbow. "You're onto something. Don't blink." My jaw ached from clenching through small talk. I rolled it until it clicked. As twilight pooled, people lingered. We gathered the cards, stacked chairs, shook hands that stayed a second longer than usual. A kid in a dinosaur sweatshirt sprinted down the dock. I didn't flinch. Ethan stepped into his path and gently turned him toward the grass. My body noticed. My mind took notes. When the last taillights faded, we stood under the pavilion lights and opened the folded card Mara had given me. Her handwriting was spare and fierce. "Need, one night where my door stays only a door. Give, the photo if I have to." Heat pricked my eyes. I looked at Ethan. He looked at me like someone learning a language fast because the room is on fire. We cleaned in a silence that wasn't peace but wasn't empty. I wrapped the cleat and slid it into my bag. My palms hummed with leftover adrenaline. "Tomorrow," I said, "we take these cards into the boardroom." Maya nodded. The assistant grinned like a boxer. Mara squeezed my hand. Ethan swallowed. Then we all turned to the dark water together, because that's where the next line starts. Morning turned the index cards into work. The sponsor's assistant marched us into a coffee-bright conference room, spread the cards like a map, and said, "Make it real." We did. The board chair listened, asked about oversight, then slid off his watch like a pledge. "Matched," he said. It wasn't fireworks, it was weight. By lunch, the dock fund sat pinned to the top of every page that mattered. By afternoon, 2 partner orgs signed on to vet requests. A knot in my stomach loosened and then clenched again, because I kept waiting for the other shoe. It arrived soft, a text from an unknown number, calendar revised. No threats. After that, silence. The bots cooled. The cheerful smear account vanished. A pastor sent us 3 families with rent due and pride set aside. We moved fast, small wires under a bridge we were still building. Ethan kept his head down and his hands full, calls, receipts, walking donors to the edge of their own stories. He looked thinner, or maybe just less padded by pretend. Late, when the room emptied, I carried the cleat to the dock because I needed the boards to tell me if I was imagining this. The lake breathed steady. I set the cleat on the edge and let my feet hang. Revenge didn't feel like a trumpet. It felt like relief with splinters. Footsteps stitched the path. The windbreaker man stopped short, hands visible. "No tote. I'm not here for a scene," he said. "He's not coming back." My jaw tightened. "Because we made him irrelevant." He huffed. "Because you made noise where he eats." He didn't leave. He watched the water like it owed him context. "You found a hospital slip," he said. "He hides the last letter so the debt can't bite the rest of his life." His mouth twitched. "Kid stuff. Not hers. His." The splinters shifted. "That doesn't make this clean," I said. "No," he said. "Just true." He started with help. Moved into pressure. Then forgot the difference. You pushed him back to remembering. I hated that my eyes stung. "You could have remembered sooner." He nodded like he'd practiced being hit. He pulled the cheap camera from his jacket, set it between us like a tool he was done with. "It's empty," he said. He told me to clear it. He glanced at my bag. "Keep the dock." Then he left, shoulders rounded, as if the path tilted uphill. I stayed until the boards felt warm through my jeans. I slid the camera into my bag and wrapped the cleat again, slower, like apology. I texted Maya that the water was quiet. She answered with a heart and "go home." Home was the place where I had started lying to myself. Ethan stood from the table, folder open, hands empty. "We did it," he said, voice rough. "We started it," I said, because I needed a word that made room for tomorrow. He nodded. "I want to keep standing where you point," he said. "Even if you point away from me." My throat burned. "I don't have an answer tonight," I said. "I have a job. I have a bed. I have a line between the two. Don't cross it." He swallowed. "Okay." He meant it, at least for the night. I showered too hot and watched steam erase me. In the mirror I looked like someone who'd held a heavy thing and set it down without letting it drop. In bed, I put the cleat on the nightstand because it was ugly and honest and I trusted those more than pretty. My jaw unclenched with a click. My heart settled. Toward morning, I dreamed the dock had a door at the end, and when I opened it, there was just more water. Not scary. Just more. I texted Mara, "Tonight, your door is only a door." She sent back a photo of a lock with a cartoon sticker. My chest lifted, then hurt, then lifted again. We took the cards back to the conference room and started calling down the list. A man offered a spare room for a month. A team needed rides. A woman with a garden said she had tomatoes and thyme. The dock kept breathing. The cheerful account stayed gone. The unknown number stayed quiet. Ethan wrote a note for the fund page. I called secrecy protection when it was fear. Donations ticked up like a pulse. Revenge, it turned out, wasn't the fire. It was the frame that kept the house from collapsing while we rebuilt inside it. And the quiet thing I'd buried? I wasn't digging it up anymore. I was learning to live without feeding it.